Ugh, so close, so damn close. Hey guys, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here investigating your favorite albums, and today I have promised every single one on this planet to do a mini albums review video where I review more than one albums in one video. Let's go. So, I have already finished talking about albums that I like from previous years, and now I'm gonna return to talking about albums from this year. I'm talking about mini albums review. I'm still gonna continue talking about albums from the past until the foreseeable future. And I forgot to mention that I also listened to the Michael Kiwanuka album, Kiwanuka, for a little bit. Thought it was just okay, not really worth discussing. There are some really good tracks here and there. The track Hero, particularly, is friggin' awesome. We get some sweet, sort of 70s throwback guitars that are just awesome, and the vocals, they're just golden. But yeah, other than this song, Hero, the rest of the album is just okay. Anyway, I don't have much time left. I'm very busy currently and in the year, for the rest of the year. So let's start off with the latest Harry Styles album, Fine Line. Look at these, look at this album cover. Look at this album cover. This is one of the ugliest album covers I've seen in the year. And I mean, with all due respect to whoever made this album cover, this just makes no sense. It's almost like they're trying to go for an artistic feel to it while trying to make the album cover funny at the same time, with the weird hand and the fish-eyed lens. And it's just awkward. Anyways, back to the album. Harry Styles, a former One Direction member, now going solo. This is his sophomore solo album. His debut album came out in the year 2017, I think. I gave it a very, very, very small review, and I actually didn't really like it all that much, even though there are some legitimately good singles like Sign of the Times. But this album, it's definitely an improvement. But still, it's sort of a hodgepodge. It is sort of a hit or miss. It's a kind of a mess still, but nonetheless, still an improvement. The album starts off with, oh my gosh, what the hell's going on? Oh my gosh. Okay, a piece of hair just went into my skin. Took it out. Let's resume. So, the album starts off with the track Golden, which is a very sunny, bright pop rock intro for the album with some swagger vocals, some driving drums, and it sounds very much like a Strokes song. And even though the production is really not that great, and even though there really isn't all that much vocals on the track, and when there are vocals, it's not very impressive. Still, it's a really pleasant sounding song. I don't mind it at all. Very summery, very bright. The next track, Watermelon Sugar, is one of the lead-up singles to the album, and it is actually a pretty catchy tune. And it's this groovy throwback pop ballad song that is, very laid back, very relaxed, kind of summery, even though this album came out in the winter. But even though I initially kind of enjoy this track, the more I listen to it, the more I realize how dumb it is. The chorus is really not that good. Watermelon sugar, high, watermelon sugar, I, and on this track, Harry Styles basically compares love and sex with fruits, like it's never been done before. Anyway, we have the track Adore You, which is a song that I really didn't enjoy right off the get-go, and now also not really. It's a pretty nondescript, generic song. Sounds very, very early Maroon 5-esque. Sounds like something that Adam Levine would hop on. The beat is really generic. It's not a very impressive song. The next track, Lights Up, is the big single leading up to the album, and originally I really like it because it's a pretty impressive stylistic change for Harry Styles, and it's actually pretty refreshing and nice, and it's a pretty nice take on moody blue eye soul R&B fusion. And the more I listen to it, and in the album's context, it's actually pretty drab of a song. It's actually not as fun or as I'm not even talking about fun, like engaging and interesting of a song. It's actually pretty dry, and the structure is kind of messy. The next track, Cherry, is actually even more mundane. The instrumentals are really stripped back and acoustic. The vocals are very subdued and quiet, and we also get these vocal harmonies, which I just really don't care for. We have the track Falling, which is this somber ballad that actually has some impressive vocals, which are actually really hard to find on this album. And the melodies on this track, they're very fluid, very moving, and actually kind of touching. One of the better ballads that Harry Styles had ever done. And immediately after that, we have the track To Be So Lonely. And this track doesn't sound lonely at all. And essentially, we get some cutesy, indie, folky guitars that are kind of flirty. We get some, island grooves. And it just ends off sounding kind of drunken and sleepy instead of lonely. I really don't feel alone listening to this song, despite how much I feel alone in real life. That says something about the song. It failed. Anyways, next song is She, which is this 70s rock and soul fusion song with some buzzing guitar solos and some reverby sound effects laced all over the track. And while it isn't a fantastic song, it is definitely one of the highlights on the album. The melodies are actually kind of dreamy and psychedelic, and the song kind of hits hard, and the vocals, they're very bright and beautiful. We have the next song, Sunflower Volume 6, and it might be my favorite song on the entire album. This song sounds like a fusion between reggae and folk and pop, and it's doing that really well, very smoothly, very fluidly. This song also has a very heavy Vampire Weekend vibe, which is actually really nice, and this song is equally as catchy and as focused as well as sharp at the same time. Anyway, immediately afterwards, the album just trails off. We have the track Canyon Moon, which is this incredibly boring vintage pop folk song with little to no progression whatsoever. The next track, Treat People with Kindness, is sort of a, dumb song, very dumb sounding, only because of the very campy and non-self-aware group vocals on the track. It just makes the song sound like a very dumbed down, watered down gospel kids song. And the vocals in the second half of the track is incredibly campy and flat and boring, to be honest. And the album really ends off with a boring song with the title track, and the falsettos are weak, and it sounds like a really bad collaboration between Bon Iver and Sufjan Stevens. It's really not that impressive. So yeah, overall, it's a mixed bag. It's a hodgepodge. It is sort of a mess. But still, it's an improvement nonetheless, because none of the songs here are downright terrible, but a handful of the songs here are, they need improvement. My favorite song here is Sunflower Volume 6, and my least favorite is probably Treat People with Kindness. I am giving Harry Styles' Fine Line a light 6 out of 10. For my second album, I'm going to be talking about Camila Cabello's latest album, Romance. Oh my gosh, what an original album title. Starting off, she is a former member of Fifth Harmony, like Harry Styles is a former member of One Direction. So she's from Fifth Harmony, and this is also her sophomore solo effort. And her first album, Camila, came out in early 2018. I thought it's incredibly boring and underwhelming and lackluster. And similar to Harry Styles' album, this album is actually an improvement. Improved a lot, actually, not as boring or as generic. But still, none of the songs on this album really stand out to me. So it's actually not that great of an album either. First off, we have the album opener, Shameless, which has some subdued, energetic guitars, some nice, luscious melodies, and essentially an anticlimactic chorus, because whenever Camila Cabello's vocals just swell and about to explode, all the instrumentals, they just disappear into the background. It's all gone. So it's incredibly anticlimactic. Where did they all go? And usually when artists pull this off, it can be very epic if done the right way with the right rhythm. There is little to no rhythm on this track. Anyway, we have the track Living Proof for the next track, which sounds incredibly similar to Shameless. The beat is more loose and more weak, and it sounds like Camila is pulling off a Taylor Swift impersonation on the track. Other than the parts where Camila would suddenly sing this falsetto, which is incredibly ear-piercing and not pleasant at all. Okay, I get it. You can sing very high notes, okay? You don't have to force that high note down our ears. Afterwards, we have the notorious song Señorita, featuring Shawn of Mendes. And honestly, it's not that bad of a song. It's a catchy song in its core, and the vocal duets with Shawn Mendes is actually pretty nice. But the catchy melodies of the song is essentially wrapped around in such boring and drab instrumentations. Basically, some lightly strummed guitars and minimal beats. It doesn't sound interesting, doesn't sound engaging, it doesn't sound like anything. And there's this line where Camila basically says, you say we're friends, but we know how each other tastes like, which makes me throw up a little bit. Anyway, we have the track Liar, which is a track that I didn't like at all initially, but it actually grew on me a lot, even though the music video is dumb AF. It tries to be funny, it tries to be goofy, but it ends off looking kinda awkward. And yeah, even though the verses they're a little drab, the chorus is actually kind of fun and Latin flavored, not in a generic way, but sort of in a bouncy, danceable way. I actually kind of enjoy the track now. We also have the track Should Have Said It, which is also one of my favorite songs on the album, if not my favorite. Yes, it sounds like Camila is ripping herself off the song Havana featuring Young Thug. It literally has the same chord progression, the same tempo, the same tone, but still, I like the bitter-ish guitars, and it's a very catchy song without any awkward moments on the track. We also have the track My Oh My featuring Da Baby, which is this generic, R&B rap song with a pretty basic trap beat. The vocals are dry with not that much instrumentations. It's really not that good. We have the song Bad Kinds of Butterflies, which sounds like Camila is pulling off an Ariana Grande impression. And we also get these pitched vocals in the choruses, which is honestly kind of stomach churning. It's like, okay, Camila Cabello has a nice natural voice, and then you have to pitch it and compress it into something malformed and ugly, and it's just, why would you do that? And the song also has a non-chorus. We also have the song Easy, which is this boring ballad pop song, which also has a non-chorus, where it's about to build up to something big before the chorus, and then when the chorus hits, all the instrumentations just disappear, and it's just anticlimactic. It's a non-chorus. We have the track Feel It Twice, which is a pretty boring ballad, not gonna lie, but at least the chord progression is pretty solid, pretty cohesive on the track. We also have the track Dream of You, which has a really sluggish beat, and another non-chorus. The track Cry For Me has some really dry production, and the vocals, they sort of dominate the entire track, and whenever the vocals sort of layer on top of one another and they sing in a very goofy way. It's actually kind of obnoxious. And we have the track This Love, which is a boring slow jam, and the na na nas have returned. We have the track Used to This, which is also very boring, and the song doesn't have a structure, and the album ends off with First Man, which is also very boring, and also very boring. This album actually sort of bores me even more than Camila, even though the tracks here they do feel more matured than the songs off of Camila, but still not really enjoying the album. Feeling a strong 4 on this thing. Strong 4. Anyways, third album that I'm going to be talking about is Matana Roberts with Kwon Kwon Chapter 4 Memphis. It's not Coin Coin, okay? It's not Coin Coin. It's Kwon Kwon, which is how French people impersonate ducks. Anyway, Matana Roberts had been dropping Kwon Kwon albums for a while already. We have the first chapter to the series, Gens de Couleur Libre. Sorry if I mispronounce anything, but basically it means free people of color, and it's a pretty impressive free jazz project. And then we have chapter 2, Mississippi Moonchild. We have chapter 3, River Run Thee, which is even more drony, experimental, and freakish. And then now we have chapter 4, Memphis, which is another installment in the Avant-Garde jazz project. And for this album, it is actually very dark, and not very dark, but somewhat dark, and actually horrifying. It's pretty scary because this album essentially deals with traumatic memories, and it's really hard to tell on the first listen because of how disjointed and crazy and here and there everywhere the instrumentals are. But the more you listen to it, the more you realize it's an album about negative memories. Anyways, as always, this album is incredibly noisy and disorienting. We have the intro track, Jewels of the Sky, Inscription, where it starts off with some really dramatic cinematic tones. We get a group of vocalists just singing the same note in a very ominous way. Also, we get some horns, some sax. They're very loose, and it leads into the second track very smoothly as far as the eye can see. And this time with some plucky notes, some jaw harp that goes like bow, 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 bow. It's like I'm in the southern USA right now. And on the second track, we finally get some spoken word, which actually constantly pops up on this album. And when spoken word pops up, they're usually from the same paragraph, but on the first go it's cut short, and then later on when the spoken word piece is repeated again, we hear more and more and more, sort of like To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. Anyways, the spoken word passage is actually really interesting, really engaging, where Matana Roberts, or whoever protagonist she is portraying on the album, says, "I am the child of the wind. Even my daddy says so. We used to race, and I would win, and daddy would say, 'Run, baby, run, run like the wind.'" We get some really intense cries and yelps at the beginning of the third track, Trail of the Smiling Sphinx, which is 10 minutes long. And it's bold. It's gigantic. It's titanic. We get some scratchy double bass, which sounds incredibly filthy and insane and inhumane. We have some really sharp, shrill reeds just flying everywhere, floating around. We get some banging drums just constantly banging for a few minutes or so in the middle of the track, and then dissipates. Suddenly, we also get some screams and yelps on the track later on, and this track is pretty multifaceted, and it's very entertaining, even though I have no idea which direction is the instrumentals going, which is actually a plus for me because it's just so entertaining. Anyway, we have this the next track, Piddling, which starts off with some country horns, like a start to your average southern country song, except everything just melts down. All the instrumentals, they just melt down and plunge to the ground. We get some harrowing horns, and it actually sours, and the tone becomes darker and more horrifying. I actually feel like I'm being pulled into this very cinematic moment where I witness a retelling of a very dark and negative and traumatic story, and I'm sort of in a space where I'm in this museum, just sort of floating past all these flashes of memories, but yet I can't make a chronological arrangement of all these memories, and I can't make sense of them because the album hasn't fully opened up to me yet. We have the next track, Shoes of Gold, which is actually a very eerie and ghoulish track. We get some swirls of vibraphones, which are actually soft and dreamy, but also disconnected and ominous. The next track, Wildfire Bear, also starts off very loosely, and in the middle it gets exciting with the constantly rattling hi-hats, but still overall the track isn't all that engaging to me. However, the next track, Fit to Be Tied, is a ferocious avant-garde jazz track. We get some stumbling drums, squealing horns that are just so aggressive and wild and anxiety-inducing. Yet all the other instrumentals on the track, they just sloppily just step on one another. It feels so drunken, and at the very end it starts to build momentum and it starts to get very aggressive until it transitions to the next track, Her Mighty Waters Run, which is this very dark, somber, sorrowful Negro spiritual track, which is very eye-opening and skin-crawling and bone-chilling. We have the next song, All Things Beautiful, which is sort of a return to, I guess, some of the earlier tracks on the album, where we get some plucky acoustics, some jaw harp, and on this track and the next track, In the Fold, we get the spoken word again. And on the next track, In the Fold, it is pretty similar to the previous track, All Things Beautiful, except we have some more droning tones, and we have a new piece of spoken word where Matana Roberts talk about how this little girl sees this plate of food in the middle of the woods and decides to eat that plate of food, even though she knows that it's a trap. And this plate of food moves further and further away from home, sort of leading this girl into the unknown. The track Raise Yourself Up may be my favorite on the entire album, just because of how intense the track is. Again, it starts off with some very just loud and bold shouts and yelps. It's like battle cries. We get some pounding drums, incredibly intense, swelling instrumentations burning underneath. It's like I'm listening to Swans, or maybe a very intense Godspeed You Black Emperor track, except it's avant-garde jazz. Next page. The penultimate track here is Backbone Once More, and it's this 51-second long interlude. I don't know why I'm mispronouncing words today a lot. Maybe it's because I'm super duper tired and stressed out. Anyway, it's a 51-second long interlude leading to the last track, How Bright They Shine, which is also an incredibly bold finish for the album. We get some pump organs, crazy saxophones, industrial distortion that's very loud and static in the back, creating a wall of white noise. We get some rumbly bass, which is very aggressive but also at the same time eerie, and it's just a very impressive ending for the album. So yeah, overall, while it took me a while for me to enjoy this album, it's a very rewarding experience. It's harrowing, it's traumatic, and it's cinematic. I'm feeling an 8 out of 10 on the album. My favorite track here is Raise Yourself Up. Least favorite is Wildfire Bear. Moving over to the fourth album, Anamanaguchi, with USA. So Anamanaguchi is a chiptune, bit pop, EDM, video game oriented music outfit, and they have not been dropping albums for like 6 years now, and they have returned, and this album is solid. We have the title track, which is actually basically this weird intro. We get some chants of USA. We get some glitchy synths that are all melting down. We also get some clear pianos, leading into the second track, Lorem Ipsum, which is this auto-generated text. It means nothing, and this is also the Arctic anthem, which explains how crystalline and celestial this track sounds, which is beautiful. It sounds like I'm witnessing the aurora borealis just up front in front of my eyes. And we also get some booming distorted drums, some explosive synths, and a very drony outro. The next track, the CRT Woods, has a very driving beat, a little punky, also some very dense, thick, burning synths, some organic drums, and it's all very nostalgic and sweet. And it sounds like it came straight out of an anime, maybe an anime inspired video game, and it's just very sugar coated, very sweet, very nostalgic, and I love it. The track Speak to You, Memory Messengers is basically another interlude with some basic keyboard passages leading up to Sunset by Plane, which is a vocal song on the album, one of the few songs in the album with a guest feature here. And the vocals by the guest feature, it's breathy, and it's not very well mixed. It sort of rides on top of the instrumentals, even though it's not a bad song at all. We have the track Air Online, which starts off with some choppy vocals, as well as some shimmery, glitchy synths. Later on, some thumping beats, some crunchy bass. It's very danceable. Really reminds me a lot of Daft Punk. Anyway, we have another interlude, Apophenia Light, Name Eaters, and it's a cut, chopped, screwed track that's very clunky, pauses awkwardly, but also very quickly at the same time. Not one of the best interludes on the album, not one of my favorite tracks as well. And the next track, Overwriting in Corporate, also not that great in my opinion. While I like how video game inspired the track is, the mid-paced beats, the sort of low-key synths, is just not very impressive, even though at the end we get an epic build. However, the album is pretty solid for the rest of the runtime. BSX features Vocaloid, 16-year-old Japanese vocal software Hatsune Miku, whose vocals on the track is actually really quiet. I kind of wish that her vocals are, amped up a little more. And also, we get some sticky lead melodies, a driving beat, and this track sounds very innocent and young and very catchy as well. We also have the track On My Own featuring Hana, who you may have heard of on the track We Appreciate Power by Grimes. But Hannah's not the pet of Grimes, okay? She's on her own. She's independent. She's producing her own record, and she's appearing on this record as well. And it's a very catchy song, actually. I really like the vocals on the track, even though the mixing could have been better. And it's a pretty nostalgic song. It sounds like it could be an epic finale to a very fun anime where all the main characters blast a laser beam towards the enemy and save the entire world. And it's a pretty epic song, not gonna lie, even though it's not the last song. Afterwards, we have the track Up to You featuring Mish, which is a way softer and more tender song. Even though the beats are sharp, the synths are rich, it's still a very cutesy song, and the singing is really nice, and the mixing is actually pretty good. We have the track Tear, which is also an interlude, and it sets the tone for the ending of the album. We also get dense, like monumental layers, thick layers of synths, which are very thick. It's like staring straight at the sun. Afterwards, we have the track We Die, which starts off with some really nice humble pianos, then some fragmented synths, then a soft beat, then a soaring bass. A very solid penultimate track, but the ending of the album is actually basically a reprise of the album opener, LOM, or LOM, and it's a pretty nice resolve to the album, starting off sounding a little eerie, later on a little sleepy. Could have been better, could have been more climactic, but still not not bad at all. I am feeling a light 8 out of 10, light to decent 8. Yeah, I'm really tired right now. Jesus. Favorite track here is oh gosh, what's my favorite song here? My favorite song here is Lorem Ipsum. Uh, Actually, the CRT Woods. That's my favorite song. And my least favorite is the song Apophenia Light. Okay, I'm about to die right now, so let's quickly get over my last album. That is Yazz Ahmed with Polyhymnia. Yazz Ahmed is a jazz musician, a Bahraini British jazz musician. And she makes some spiritual jazz, some psychedelic jazz, and of course Arabic jazz, which is really cool. Arabic music and Indian music are two kinds of music that I really want to get into as of this moment. Also African music. I really want to know more African music. Anyways, this album has 6 tracks, but 6 long tracks, and each track has a pretty distinctive vibe and tone to it, which I really like. Anyway, it starts off very, very heavily Arabic with Lahan al-Mansour, and it's an Arabic slow jazz track, and we get some mystic instrumentals, some sneaky horns, some nice clappy beats, hand drums, vibraphones, and sax solos, which are actually wild towards the end. And it's a really satisfying song. It just sounds very flavorful, very tuneful, and very interesting to me. We have the track Ruby Bridges, which is this slow pace spiritual jazz track. It sounds a little average, a little drab, kind of sleepy as well, even though I kind of like the jaunty melodies on the first half. We also have the song One Girl Among Many, which is a spoken word jazz song, and very obviously a British spoken word piece where a bunch of women basically says this thing together where they talk about, female empowerment, which is a really good message. But the group chant is just so, so unaware of itself, and it just doesn't fit with the overall tone of the album at all. It just ends off sounding kind of awkward. And the backing instrumentals in the back, they're not very exciting either. They're kind of stripped back. Afterwards, we have the track 2857, and wow, this track goes hard. The first half is kind of slow. We get some sour horns, but later on, at the second half, we get this very aggressive, speedy drum beat and some clunky, jerky pianos just very wildly climbing up, and then we get some horns and saxophones just syncopated very tightly with the pianos just going wild. It hits very hard, and I love it. And we have the penultimate track, Deeds, not words, Deeds. And it's a slight bit of a return of the Arabic jazz element, and it starts off very psychedelically, actually. But later on, we get some climbing and falling angular bass lines and some nice horns and marching drums together, and it's a pretty nice jazz track as well. And to end off, we have the track Barbara, which is over 10 minutes long, and it has a really strange rhythm. We get some curious keyboards in the beginning where every other instrumental on the track, they just don't line up, they don't fit together at all, but yet they somehow play together to form this very special, unique sound. It's actually kind of brilliant. It's very loose, very fragmented and disjointed, yet sneaky. And towards the end, all the instrumentals, they go together, and it feels huge. The presence feels huge, but also at the same time very calming and very sleepy. Especially at the end, we get some very sleepy trumpets. So yeah, overall, I kind of like this album. Very versatile and very flavorful, and I am feeling an 8 out of 10 on this album as well. My favorite song here is the opener, Lahan al-Mansour, and my least favorite is Ruby Bridges. So, have you listened to these 5 albums? From 1 to 10, how would you rate them? Like if you like them, hate if you hate them, subscribe if you want more. And thanks for watching.